Hey, what's up, everybody? My name's Cosmic, and I'd like to thank you for choosing to watch my guide on how to heal as a Discipline Priest in patch 8.3 of World of Warcraft. We'll get started by just covering the very basics of what it takes to heal as a Discipline Priest, the baseline skills that are made available to you, and then we'll start getting into more complicated things like the talents, Azerite powers, essences, and corruptions that you need, and then eventually into the actual gameplay of how you heal both in a raid and in a 5-man environment for Mythic Plus. So, without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. The very first thing that needs to get mentioned when you're talking about a Discipline Priest is how they actually heal. They heal through something called Atonement. Atonement is a buff that you apply to a party member which lasts for 15 seconds that causes any damage you deal to be replicated as healing onto a player whom you have just applied Atonement to. So how do you actually apply Atonement? Well, you got three options. You can either cast Power Word Shield, Shadow Mend, or Power Word Radiance. Power Word Shield is an instant cast spell which absorbs a small amount of damage when you cast it on a party member. Shadow Mend is a strong, fast heal that will leave a small dot on the target whenever you heal them. And Power Word Radiance is an area of effect healing spell that will affect not only your target but up to 4 nearby allies and apply Atonement for 60% of its normal duration. This means the atonements applied through Power Word Radiance only last for 9 seconds. Now that we know how to apply Atonement, let's see how we actually heal through it. And that's through doing damage. So in the baseline toolkit of a Discipline Priest, you got 4 options of doing damage. Option 1, Smite. Option 2, Penance. Option 3, Shadow Word Pain. Option 4, Shadow Fiend. Smite is pretty straightforward. You cast it, and it does damage, and heals through Atonement. Not really much to read into here. Penance is a channeled spell which fires off 3 individual bolts which all do damage. It's also important to note that this spell can be cast while on the move, so you don't have to stand still while casting it. Shadow Word Pain is a instant cast damage over time effect which can be applied to multiple enemies. Keep in mind, each of these damage over time effects are going to heal through Atonement, so the more damage over time effects you have, the more effective healing over time effects you have. And last but definitely not least, we have Shadow Fiend, a 3-minute cooldown that summons a pet that absolutely decimates your enemies for 15 seconds. You can use this as either a healing cooldown or a damage cooldown, just because of how much damage it does. Now the last thing that we need to talk about to actually round out the toolkit of a Disc Priest is its utility. There's 4 things that you have to work with as a Disc Priest. You got Leap of Faith, otherwise known as Grip, Rapture, Power Word Barrier, and Pain Suppression. Leap of Faith holds a special place in my heart. I love this ability so much. All that it does is pulls an ally towards your position, but the possibilities for how you can use this ability are absolutely endless. You can pull allies out of where they don't need to be standing. You can save them from falling off a cliff to their certain death. You can pull them up a cliffside if they're struggling to get up there to be able to hit mobs. You can do anything with this. It's completely up to your imagination. And I will tell you from personal experience, the better you are at using this ability, the more well-known you're going to be playing a Disc Priest. This one spell is what distinguishes a good priest from a bad priest. Rapture is a spell which makes your Power Word shields hit for 3 times their normal strength, 200% normal, as well as being able to be cast on players who are affected with Weakened Soul. Weakened Soul is a debuff that is placed on a target when a Power Word shield is cast on them. It prevents you from spamming shields on them and just healing them that way, but if you have Rapture active, you're able to apply Power Word shields over and over and over again. They don't stack, but you can spam them. It's a very good way to blanket a group of players with very large absorption shields if you know that there's going to be a large amount of damage taken on the group. in a short amount of time. Or you can even just use it as a single target heal. It's very effective at doing that. As well as Power Word Shield being instant cast, you can rapture and single target heal somebody while you're running. You don't have to stand still. Next up is Power Word Barrier, a 3-minute cooldown that drops a zone on the ground which reduces all damage taken for everybody standing inside of it by 25% for 10 seconds. This is a very strong raid cooldown, or even a 5-man cooldown. It reduces a ton of damage. The higher damage you're taking, the more value you get out of this, since it is a percentage absorption. Or not absorption, excuse me, a damage reduction by 25%. You drop it, you stand in it, you take less damage. It's very good. And lastly, we have Pain Suppression, a single target damage reduction cooldown on a 3-minute cooldown that reduces all damage taken by 40% for 8 seconds. 25% from barrier is good, 40% from Pain Suppression is even better. This is also castable while stunned, which is very important because there's a lot of abilities in BFA that stun you while also doing pretty high damage to you. This can be used as a personal cooldown or cast on an ally as an external. Alright, now that we've covered the baseline toolkit of a disciplined priest, let's go ahead and start looking at the talents that are available. Starting things off in the 15 row, we have Castigation, Twist of Fate, and Schism. Castigation causes your penance to fire 1 extra bolt during its cast time. Twist of Fate causes you to do 20% more damage and 20% more healing whenever you heal a target whose health is under 35%. And Schism is a 24-second cooldown cast that does a moderate amount of damage. It causes anything that you do to that target for the next 9 seconds to do 40% more damage. That is incredibly strong, and is going to be the choice that you take 9 times out of 10. Heck, 99 times out of 100 you're going to be taking Schism just because of the nature of how Disciplined Priest works. This ability, Schism, allows you to burst heal targets. This is very, very strong for when you ramp, something that I'll cover later in this guide. Moving on to the 30 row, we have Body and Soul, where your Power Word Shield and Leap of Faith abilities increase your target's movement speed by 40% for 3 seconds. Masochism, which makes you take 10% reduced damage whenever you cast Shadow Mend on yourself. And Angelic Feather, an ability that has 3 charges and allows you to place a feather on the ground. Whenever a ally runs over that, including yourself, the movement speed of that character is increased by 40% for 5 seconds. This ability is the go-to in almost every situation. There are times where you can take Body and Soul, but the majority of the time you're going to be taking Angelic Feather. Again, 99 times out of 100. In the 45 row, we have your mana management options. We have Shield Discipline, causing any of your Power Word shields whenever they are completely absorbed to restore 0.5% of your mana. We have Mindbender, which is a replacement for Shadow Fiend when it's selected. It is a 1-minute cooldown. It acts the same way as a Shadow Fiend does. You summon a pet and it smacks your target. This one lasts for 12 seconds. It's a little weaker than the Shadow Fiend is, and whenever it attacks, it does 0.5% of your maximum mana restored to you. And lastly, we have Power Word Solace, an instant cast ability that does a good amount of holy damage to your target and restores 1% of your maximum mana. The cooldown of this ability is reduced by your haste value, and as a result, we will be choosing this one, again, 99 times out of 100. In the 60 row, we have Psychic Voice, reducing the cooldown of Psychic Scream by 30 seconds, bringing it down to a total of a 30-second cooldown. Dominant Mind, causing your mind control spell to actually have that target become your pet for the next 2 minutes. And Shining Force, a 45-second cooldown that causes a burst of light to erupt from a friendly target or yourself, causing anybody hit by the burst to be knocked back a very large distance and have their movement speed slowed by 70% for 3 seconds. This is the first row where it doesn't really matter what you pick. I personally run with Shining Force most of the time just because it provides me another option to either peel an ally or myself while not actually having to put myself in any sort of danger. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Shining Force. But again, it's really up to player choice. Now in the 75 row, we have our first meaningful choice. We have Sins of the Many, Contrition, and Shadow Covenant. I never ever run Contrition. I can't find anybody that does for any situation. The choice here is really between Sins of the Many and Shadow Covenant. Sins of the Many increases all damage you do by 12%, reduced by the amount of active atonements that you have out at the given moment. Shadow Covenant is an instant cast 12-second cooldown spell that does a pretty respectable amount of burst healing to up to 5 targets, and leaves a small healing absorb on them for the next 6 seconds. There's a lot of discussion that's gone between these two talents, and it goes back and forth from player to player on which one they prefer using. I personally run with Sins of the Many and would be the one that I recommend that you run too, but it is possible for you to run Shadow Covenant, particularly if you're trying to be a little bit more defensive instead of aggressive in your playstyle. In the 90 row, we have Purge the Wicked, Divine Star, and Halo. Purge the Wicked is a replacement for Shadow Word Pain, so when you choose this replaces that spell on your action bar. It is a longer lasting dot that does more damage over its duration and spreads to a nearby target whenever you hit a penance on a target who currently is afflicted with Purge the Wicked. Divine Star is a new spell in your kit with a 15-second cooldown. It throws a star out from your character 24 yards, both doing damage and healing targets that it comes into, whether they are friend or foe, both on the way out and returning to you. And Halo is a 1.5-second cast, 30-yard radius that sends a halo out that does damage and heals anybody that it comes in contact with. Purge the Wicked is the go-to, for reasons that we will explain later, for Azerite armor and just the fact that it does more damage over time. And lastly, in the 100 row, we have Lenience, Luminous Barrier, and Evangelism. Lenience reduces all damage taken by members with your atonement on them by 3%. Luminous Barrier replaces your Power Word Barrier, but will allow you to cast a instant cast Absorption Shield on all allies within 40 yards. And Evangelism extends the duration of all of your active atonements by 6 seconds on a 1.5 minute cooldown. This is the bread and butter of what makes a Disciplined Priest able to burst heal an entire raid from 10% health up to full in a matter of seconds. This is the ability that you will choose while in a raid. No questions asked. There is no competition. Now that we've made our way through the talents, let's go ahead and talk about a Disciplined Priest's stat weights. A Disc Priest will always value haste over anything, almost all the time. They want haste over crit, over mastery, over versatility. Haste allows you to output more spells into a target in a atonement window. So you would apply an atonement, and then you're able to fit as much damage as you possibly can before that atonement wears out. This also allows you to affect more people inside of a Rapture. It allows you to fit more spells inside of a Schism window. When you use Evangelism and have atonements on an entire raid, you want to output as much as you can in that short window of time as you can, so you can almost never have enough haste. Following haste, you want crit. You want all of those spells that you're using to be as effective as possible, and there's nothing more effective than a critical hit. So you want haste over crit, over mastery, over versatility. The 3 pieces of gear that you want in patch 8.3 out of the Ny'alotha raid are the Robes of Unreality from Prophet Skitra, the Spalders of Miasmic Mycelia off of Carapace of N'Zoth, and the Visage of Nightmarish Machinations off of N'Zoth himself. Each of these pieces comes with a Heart of Darkness trait, which increases all of your secondary stats. That means haste, crit, mastery, and versatility by an amount, while your corruption level is 25 or higher. 3 of these traits stacked on top of each other results in a ton of stats, which is great for a Disciplined Priest, because we want as many stats as we can. We love stacking stats, so pick up 3 of these while you're wearing these Azerite pieces. The next trait we're going to want to pick up is Enduring Luminescence, which increases the healing that Power Word Radiance does, as well as causes it to apply atonement for 70% of its normal duration opposed to 60%, which results in an extra second of atonement from your Power Word Radiance. This allows you to fit an extra spell or 2 inside of that atonement window, which is very strong. Next, we can pick up 2 stacks of Blood Siphon, which increases your mastery as well as your leech. Leech is an incredibly strong trait for discipline because of how much passive healing it does. All of the damage that you're doing will be leached back onto you without you even needing to think about it. So pick this up, don't even look back. Leech is very, very good. Next, we will grab Synergistic Growth, which causes your Power Word Radiance to give you an infusion of Mastery for the next 10 seconds, which fits in perfectly with your ramp windows. When you cast Power Word Radiance, you get a bunch of Mastery. Mastery helps you heal better through Atonement. This is a very good trait. You want to pick up one of these. The next Azerite power that we're going to pick up is actually a Shadow Priest power, so before you can choose this talent, you need to be in Shadow Specialization, but it will function just fine when you swap back to Discipline. What it does is increases the damage done by your Shadow Word Pain, or in our talent selections choice, your Purge the Wicked's damage over time, which in effect increases your healing over time, since all of our dots are translated into hots through Atonement. So we just get a stronger dot out of this, so let's pick that up. Lastly, the Azerite power that we're going to pick up is called Depth of the Shadows. This is probably the most important power that we're going to pick up. Anytime your Purge the Wicked does damage over time, it increases the healing of your next Shadow Mend by a number stacking up to 30 times. This also increases the duration of the atonement applied through the Shadow Mend by 2 seconds. This is very, very strong. Because of how Purge the Wicked naturally spreads, remember how you apply it and spread it through penance, you will always have dots ticking. The more haste you have, the faster you're going to be picking up Depth of the Shadow stacks, which makes your Shadow Mend stronger. The atonement duration is also incredibly strong. An extra 2 seconds allows for 3 to 4 spell casts to be fit inside of that atonement window. This trait alone will heal an incredible amount. This is a mandatory must-have. You only need one of these because it will only stack to 30 no matter what, and will only apply atonement an extra 2 seconds no matter how many stacks of this trait that you have. So let's grab this. Now that we've got Azerite armor out of the way, we'll start making our way into the essences that you'll be running with the Disc Priest. The first choice and safe choice in your major slot will be the Memory of Lucid Dreams. This is a 2-minute cooldown that increases your mana regeneration rate by 100%, as well as grants you a influx of a ton of leech during that amount of time. This is really good for sustaining yourself over long periods of time, especially if you're learning the class, because Disc Priest can be very mana hungry if you're not using your spells efficiently. This is a good way to make sure that you don't run out of mana. I would recommend this for somebody who's new to learning the class, as it will help you not run out of mana while you're learning the class, especially. For more experienced players, this is a good essence to run on a progression boss or a really high mythic plus tyrannical setting where you're in a boss fight for 4 or 5 minutes and your mana really starts to run dry. The value really starts to show in Memory of Lucid Dreams while you're in a situation like that. A second major essence slot that you can run, which I personally really enjoy running, is the Ever Rising Tide. This is almost completely opposite in playstyle of the Memory of Lucid Dreams because it actually halts your mana regeneration rate while it's active. But for the next 8 seconds after activating this, you get a small boost in haste, and any spell that you cast increases the healing you do by 4%, stacking up to however many times you can cast within that 8-second window. Another reason we want to stack haste. After that window is over, you then heal for an increased amount for the next 8 seconds. So if you cast 10 spells, you're now healing for 40% more for the next 8 seconds. This is perfect for a Disciplined Priest because there is a setup period and then there is a payoff period, and this works perfectly for that. Now, shifting gears a little bit and moving from a raid perspective to a Mythic Plus perspective, we can start looking at doing a little bit more damage ourselves. We can look at something called the Crucible of Flame. This is a 30-second cooldown with 2 charges that does increasing damage the more you cast it, as well as leaves a small dot on the target. This is a single target burst of damage that you do. Unfortunately, it does not synergize with Atonement, so any damage you do through Crucible doesn't actually get healed to your targets, which is a little bit unfortunate, but, you know, every class has to have something. But the amount of damage that this essence alone does is worth running in almost all situations in Mythic Plus. Again, unless you're running something really, really high where you really need the mana from Memory of Lucid Dreams, or if you're doing really big AoE and you need to run something like Formless Void. The Formless Void major essence slot allows you access to another party member's currently equipped major essence slot. This means that you, as a healer, are able to replicate the effects of a DPS's major Azerite slot. This means that you can run a meme beam. And let me tell you, man, not only is it fun as hell to open a pack up by doing 6 million damage, but it increases the speed at which your group can run incredibly. It helps out so much when a healer is able to contribute to DPS in this way, especially in an AoE pack where Discipline Priest usually struggles as we don't have many AoE spells. So, Formless Void, definitely recommend for a Mythic Plus environment if you know you're going to be able to get value out of it. Try to coordinate with your party, see if anybody's going to be running a meme beam, or otherwise you can run with Crucible and be just fine doing that. For minor essences, Conflict and Strife is a go-to. This is a best in slot trait. The uptime of the versatility that you get from this trait is damn near 100%. This gives you hundreds of points of value and is up almost all the time. It increases the damage you do and decreases the amount of damage you take. You should take this, no questions asked. Another option you have is a minor essence, and one that I would always recommend that you take in Mythic Plus is called the Spirit of Preservation. This synergizes very well with the Depth of the Shadows trait that we have on our Azerite piece that we had discussed earlier, and increases the value that you get out of Shadow Mend. The way that this minor essence works is every 5 seconds that you're not casting Shadow Mend, you gain a stack of a buff called Devout Spirit. Devout Spirit increases the amount of healing that your Shadow Mend will do when you cast it, and however many stacks you consume increases the crit chance of your next Shadow Mend by 20%. So if you have 5 stacks of Devout Spirit and you cast Shadow Mend, your next Shadow Mend has a 100% critical strike chance. So you'll get one very strong Shadow Mend from all of the extra healing that you have, both from Depth of the Shadow stacks as well as Spirit of Preservation stacks, and then the next heal that you follow it up with will critically strike. This shores up a lot of problems that Disc Priest has with single target healing. The ability to have 2 incredibly strong Shadow Mends back to back shores up a ton of problems that they have in Mythic Plus. The number one weakness of any Discipline Priest is our ability to heal a single target, and this helps tremendously with that. You can top off a tank in 2 Shadow Mends really quickly. I would pick this up. Now the last thing we need to discuss before we actually get into the gameplay of how to play a Discipline Priest is the corruptions that you want to stack. Fortunately for us, this is relatively simple since Discipline Priests scale so well with their own stats that it's actually pretty simple for once. The 3 corruptions that you'll be looking for are Expedient 3, Severe 3, and Ineffable Truth 1. The amount of each of these that you stack can vary player to player of whatever feels right. I personally run 4 stacks of Expedient 3, 2 stacks of Severe 3, and 2 stacks of Ineffable Truth 1. That's just what feels good to me. I feel like it's a good amount of haste that I'm sitting at, and a good amount of crit that I'm sitting at, as well as a good amount of cooldown reduction, while also not putting myself over the top in terms of corruption that I'm running. Now that we've made it through all of that, let's go ahead and actually see how this works in a live setting. Okay, so here we are in a normal Nyalotha run. We are going to be fighting Prophet Skitra, and we'll be solo healing in a group of 19. This Holy Paladin is not actually a Holy Paladin. I don't know why his role is set as a healer, but he's actually Retribution. You'll just have to take my word for it. He's either Retribution or just DPSing in Holy. Doesn't matter. The point is, I'll be solo healing this fight. Rate of 19. I chose Prophet Skitcha because the damage patterns work out pretty well with Discipline Priest Toolkit. And I thought it'd be pretty easy to explain what I was doing. So, first thing you need to notice, you see that I'm running Ever-Rising Tide Major. I have a Obsidian Edge Claw from Mott, which will be my source of mana generation, as well as a Wisdom buff. I'm using Haste Food, make sure my fort buff's up. This Vantis rune is for N'Zoth, that was from clearing it on Mythic this week, not for normal Skitcha, no need to worry. So let's just go ahead and get started here. If you're not familiar with Prophet Skitcha, I'll be stopping the video every now and then just to explain what I'm doing, and we'll see how it goes. So the first thing that I want to do, I want to make sure that atonements are on the tanks, these little white boxes with the clockwise motion counting down. That's the duration of my atonements left on them. Now the thing that I'm paying attention to right here though is Shred Psyche. If you don't know how Skitcha works, at the very beginning of the fight, there's pretty much nothing to do for about 10 seconds. But then she'll put out a random debuff on a random target, which will expire after 5 seconds. When the debuff expires, they'll drop a figment of their soul on the ground, which blows up after, I believe, a 2.5 or 3 second cast. When that cast goes off, the entire raid gets hit for a big burst of damage. So, what do I have in my toolkit as a priest to deal with that? I got Rapture Shields, I got Power Word Barrier, or I could just plan to ramp through it. So for the very first hit, you'll see what I decide to do. So I use my Rapture Shields and I start applying it to as many people as I can. I'm inside of a Bloodlust window. You can see I still have 25 minutes left on the Bloodlust. And I am stacking Expedient 12. So I have a ton of haste right now. In this 10-second window, you'll see how many Power Word Shields I've been able to apply. So far I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, now that I have all these shields out, I think it was 14 shields. You see right here, my healing done is 400,000. This is because I haven't actually healed anything until they absorb damage. When this burst goes off, you'll see just how much damage I prevented with this one play. Boom. 2.53. I prevented over 2 million points of damage just by spreading those Rapture Shields, and they didn't even notice it. These people in the raid probably think that ability doesn't hit for anything, but that's just because I'm there, preventing all that damage from happening. And they're already instantly topped. There was no need to use my Evangelism. I make sure I use my Mott Trinket so that I start getting mana back, because that was kind of expensive what I had just done. Now she's going into her down phase, Illusionary Projection. What she does in the down phase is she becomes untargetable. She'll start spawning illusions around the room that'll start hitting your entire raid with periodic ticking shadow damage. So I want to apply as many atonements as I can, as quickly as I can, and then extend the duration so that I can actually heal them through the entire down phase, or at least as long as possible. So she goes down, I'm applying atonements, Power Word shielding and whatnot. I use both of my Radiance charges here. My Shadow Fiend's out for 12 more seconds. I had cast it in the middle of my ramp so that it could start healing the people that I already had atonements on. After my second Radiance charge, I immediately use my Evangelism. The reason I did that is so all of these atonements that I have out right now, I believe I have 17. Everything, it's on everybody but one tank. I think this guy's either offline or not in the boss room or something, so it's actually only an 18-man raid that I'm healing. So everybody but one Blood DK, who really doesn't need to be healed if we're being honest, has atonements on them with my Shadow Fiend active and a target in my sights. So you'll see just how effective a Disc Priest ramp is when you're online. I use my Ever-Rising Tide, and you can see here how effective it is in this weak aura. So I'm healing for 32% extra. And nobody's health dips below 95% for that entire time. They barely even felt it. And by the time they got to the boss, it was already at 70, 60%-ish. And it's dead. So I saved my Schism at the end there, because my Schism was available, you can see, but the boss is about to die. So I don't want to waste my Schism because it's a debuff you actually place on a target. So I wait for it to die, and then when the actual one spawns, you can see the first thing I do is Schism, so that I can top all of these people that I already have atonements on. You can see I have 11 atonements out right now. And then, boom, burst heal them up, just like that. Now the next Shred Psyche's coming out. That's another big burst of damage that I'm going to have to deal with, and this time I don't have Rapture. So I'm going to have to use my Power Word Barrier to prevent as much damage as I can, because right now, I'm pretty low on cooldowns. I don't got Rapture, I only have 1 charge of Radiance, I have no Evangelism, I have no Shadow Fiend, and I'm not comfortable using my Ever Rising Tide because we still have more than half the fight to go. About half the fight to go still. And I'm a little worried about my mana being at 60%. Even though I have a Wisdom buff, I'd like to be a little bit more conservative because I have another down phase to go through, and I don't think I'm going to have Evangelism up on time. That's what's going through my mind at this point. So this person has Shred Psyche, they're going to be running over here. So what I do to prevent as much damage as I can, without spending a ton of mana, I drop a barrier. This prevents 25% of all of the damage that this is going to do to the people inside of this area. Now, unfortunately, this hunter isn't helping me out because he's standing out here, but, you know, what are you going to do? It's a pug. So, I'm applying as many atonements as I can. I use 1 Radiance charge, and I believe I'm about to cast Schism. Yeah. So I cast Schism. The cast should finish 0.1 second. Wow, look at that timing. This has 0.2 seconds left on the channel. I have 0.3 seconds left on the cast. So the frame that that's going to finish casting, I'm immediately going to burst through it. Watch the health bars here. Boom. Hardly even felt it. So we're approaching 35%, which is the time that she goes into her second down phase. I believe it's 35%. Maybe it's afterwards. Okay, yeah. So she's going down. Now I still have... Gosh. I still have 11 seconds left on my Evangelism cooldown. I don't want to use Rapture here because I think we're going to get another Shred Psyche on the last up phase. But I can start spreading atonements early. What can happen is I can start spreading atonements that last 15 seconds to as many people as I can, and then use 2 Radiance charges just before my Evangelism comes up, and then use it after the fact. So I kind of string out my cooldowns that way. So I get some dots up, applying atonements, using my Radiance charges now, get a Schism up, burst people, and then immediately hit Evangelism to extend all of these atonements. So it still worked out. Still worked out in my favor there. And the boss is dying at a good speed. Everybody is healthy. Topping off a few people. This is where Depth of the Shadows comes in. You can see here, I had 30 stacks of Death of the Shadows right here. That guy got hit for 216,000. And then immediately followed up by another guy for 116,000. That was a 100,000 healing difference between having 30 stacks of Death of the Shadows and not. So we come up from the down phase. Another Shred Psyche's coming in. 7 seconds left. I see I'm at 11% mana now, so now I'm like really, you know, I'm running dry here. I have my Mott Trinket coming up in 1 second. I immediately hit that. Yep. And then I go into Raptures, because I know that the Mott Trinket value is going to give me enough mana to actually Rapture Shield as many people as I can. So I start blanketing the raid as much as I can. I see that the ad went down here 4 seconds ago, so I Radiance now, and then immediately Schism and burst the raid back up to full. And we finished that normal Skitcha with an HPS of 151,000, and we got him through it. So I felt like that was a pretty good fight to demonstrate what makes a discipline priest strong, what mindset you're going through as you go through the fights, how you need to know what's going to happen before it actually happens, and how you need to be 3 steps ahead of even your own raid. And that's about all I have for you guys on this video of how to play a Disc Priest in patch 8.3. I thank you very, very much for watching, especially if you sat through the whole thing. I worked pretty hard on this. I know I left out a lot of information and probably messed a few things up here and there, but if you do have any questions, you can be sure to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Leave a comment below, ask me questions there. I also stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/cosmic3745. Hit me up there if you have any questions. I'd be glad to help you out. So until next time, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you later.